Let me introduce you to the leader of the team that's concerned specifically with implementing the preventive standards provisions of the new law. Don Kramer is the acting deputy director of CIFSAN. Don, let's talk first about prevention controls in facilities. How important are they? How is it going to work? How is FSMA mandate all of this?
So preventive controls are just that. They're a system that a manufacturer would put in place to first identify what are the hazards that that product might be associated with, and then to have a set of scientifically established controls that are designed to minimize the risk of occurrence of those hazards.
Who comes up with these controls? Is this something the FDA tells the facilities, or is it a collaborative process? What happens?
The processor is responsible for establishing the controls. Of course, FDA is in the position of providing guidance to help that process along.
And how quickly do these controls have to be in place?
Well, the process has really just begun. The legislation was just a couple months ago. FDA is now in the process of drafting what we call a proposed regulation. The next step is that the interested parties can submit comments to the agency, and we then consider those comments, and then we write a final regulation.
So this isn't something that a facility is going to have to come up with in a couple of days and go forward. This is a process.
Right. There's still time. Encourage folks to get started, of course, but there's still plenty of time to get these plans in place.
And do all of the requirements apply to all facilities?
No, the legislation has some specific exemptions based on size and who the facility distributes to, whether they ship to retail and that sort of thing. So there are some facilities that will not be covered by the regulations.
Is that risk-based or size-based?
The legislation specifically provides exemptions for size. FDA is also charged to look at certain low-risk activities, especially ones that occur on the farm, that might be manufacturing but are still very low risk, and to put exemptions in place if we think that's appropriate.
So let's talk about things on the farm, specifically mandatory produce safety standards. Again,
Sure.
How does FSMA treat these? How does it work? What's going to happen there?
Okay, so again, the legislation charges FDA to write a regulation here. It again is designed to reduce numbers of illnesses that occur, in this case, from produce. So we've had a process for the past year or so where we've done some listening sessions around the country, trying to understand what this sector is like.
Don, the major paradigm shift in this legislation is the focus on prevention and the fact that we are holding industry and individual growers responsible for these kinds of actions. But as our role as verifiers of that, how do we do that?
Well, the first step is education. What I think is going to be very important is another piece that's being developed, and that's this self-assessment tool. We think it's going to be very reassuring for a farmer who maybe hasn't experienced this kind of oversight before to be able to assess their own operation and say, looks like I'm in pretty good shape, so I'm not worried about the inspection should it happen someday.
Seems like a win-win for everyone. Nobody wants to get sick and no one wants to lose their business.
I think that's very true. The purpose of all of these regulations is to reduce foodborne illness. Foodborne illness is a problem for everybody, not just the consumer, but the regulatory community and of course the manufacturers and the producers of food as well. Recalls because of contamination or illness are very expensive and not at all good for the industry. So we think it is a win-win for everybody.
Don Kramer, thank you very much.